my first ever video on the GRAM on Instagram. And actually, I was gonna do this YouTube video first, and I was like, ah, fuck it, I'll do an IG video, which I had never actually done. It was super fun, actually. Um, I kind of fell off the radar here with YouTube and whatnot. And like, for instance, there are zero people. Oh, there's now there's one person watching. So um, yeah. So it was fun on Instagram because there were lots and lots of people chiming in and out. Nobody really stayed. Jeremiah 420, um, who I really, he's one of the people I really enjoy. If you guys don't follow Jeremiah 420 on Instagram, you definitely should. I guess I should mention, I don't know if I mentioned this before on YouTube, but my Instagram is Archmang, ARCHMANG, um, on Instagram. So, oh, is my sweetie here? No. Hey. Oh, well. The Irish pirate. Hey, Arch. What's up? Nice, Ajax 80. Man, this is cool. Um, so yeah, really. I mean, I guess you could consider this one more of like a. Got my coffee going here. I don't know where to set it because it keeps casting weird shadows. This is more going to be more like a vlog, I guess, than any type of knife review or what have you. Although I do want to talk about the Endura 4 because it is a fantastic knife to be honest. All things considered, especially like its price tag. I want to say you can score an Endura 4 off of Amazon, which I don't really recommend, but it is the cheapest place to get one for like $50. Green beer. I will definitely be having my fair share of green beer today. There's, I'm in Salida, Colorado, which is actually Salida, but and there is a good strong following for the old St. Patrick's. Anything that can involve beer. It's a town of like, uh, I guess Salida is probably about 5,000, and we're working on our fourth brew pub right now, brewery. So yeah. Um, but yeah, like I said, the main thing I really wanted to talk about, honestly, well, I was just gonna bullshit anyway, but hopefully say something dumb enough to be entertaining. Um, but yeah, the Endura 4. This is a knife I've never talked about before. I actually have done or did do a video on this POS, and I've done, I'm pretty sure, two or three. Oh, Cajun Blaze, the man's threat, woman's pet, right over here. Cajun Blaze catching us live. That's awesome. Um, so yeah, the Endura 4. What a fantastic little knife this is. I mean, I it's so funny. Aesthetics play a huge part in our decisions when we buy knives. A lot of us, anyway. And I never purchased an Endura because, in my opinion, it's one of the ugliest knives out there. Like, I mean, I feel like it kind of takes the cake as far as just being an unattractive knife. Taiwan, man, I had a guy from shit, now I can't remember, Portugal on Instagram this morning. So now we got a fella from Taiwan watching. That's so cool. Um, but I'll tell you what, man. Like, despite this knife being ugly, the second I slid that Spyderco box open and held this thing in my hand, that's the Toyota Corolla of knives. Well, that's true. It gets you from A to B, and that's about it. Yeah. But hell, gets good gas mileage, doesn't it? Um, but the second I held the Endura 4 in my hand, I immediately was like, "Oh shit, this I like this knife." I prefer it way above the Delica. I do have a Delica, but it just sits in the old Pelican box, waiting for me to, you know, give it to a buddy or something. Who knows? They're funny knives though. These things, like, these are definitely not investments. I would consider it a military could even be an investment, but this will never be an investment. Even like one of the fancy, Japanese steel versions, ZDP 189 or whatever, it's just never gonna be. But especially like the VG10 one, you buy this thing for $68 on Amazon or whatever, you're gonna sell it for $30 if you try to drop this on like a forum or something. So you're keeping this shit until you lose it or you break it. Um, so that's one of the things about or the way I feel about knives of this caliber, anyway. Um, this knife here permanently lives. I mean, sure, when it was new, I carried it every day for a month or something. But then it's hard to just like go, once you pick up that Sabenza again, you're just like, oh shit, bye Delica 4, you know. So this knife permanently lives in my EDC backpack, which is kind of like a bug out bag of sorts. I keep, you know, a small medical kit, some decent gloves, a raincoat, some paracord, fire striker, etc., etc., batteries, flashlight, all that kind of stuff in there. Basically, just enough things so if shit were to hit the fan, I could go from A to B, whatever. I'm a big believer in keeping some type of bug out bag handy. Maybe keep a firearm in there. Who knows? I'm a Glock guy myself. It's great. A lot of people are M&P. A lot of people are switching over to M&P. My brother-in-law is a big proponent of M&P, and I'm just like, ugh, I just don't love it. My screen just kind of went darker. Hopefully that didn't happen for everybody. Um, but yeah, Endura 4. I mean, what else is there to say about it? I don't love VG10 steel. I've never been impressed with VG10 steel. But one thing I will say about, first off, any knife. Like, if a person doesn't take a knife out and rough it up a little bit and seriously like dull that edge, sharpen it, use it, sharpen it, use it, sharpen it, man, you really can't break in, or you can't get to know a knife unless you fuck it up a little bit. I mean, that's just all there is to it. um, and VG10 is no exception to that. It like, if a person were to just take every VG10, this has been my experience with every single VG10 knife I've had, which has been, I don't know, 4 or 5, so not a whole lot. But yeah, I should. Both my Glocks are stock. Cajun Blaze says we need to see a Glock video from you. I have two Glocks right now, and they're both stock. Well, that's not true. I got a 43 Glock 43 with it's the Tallow edition, so it's got the night sights, and then I put um, Terran Tactical base plates plus ones on it. But my 19 is totally stock. Um, but yeah, back to VG10. But all the VG10 knives I've had, the steel has absolutely fucking crumbled, like to where there is no steel. I mean, like, just disintegrated. The edge is just like literally, there's flakes of steel sitting on the media or whatever it is that I'm cutting. Um, this knife right here, like, all I did was I got a new, what would you call it? It's basically a rescue device that's takes the place of a carabiner. That's a super quick carabiner. I think it's called the Frog. I don't know. I bought it for running rivers, but I was cutting the webbing off of that. Didn't touch the aluminum at all. Just cutting the webbing off of it, and literally I could see strips of blade coming off. Like, I'm just cutting webbing, like nylon webbing. And this knife just disintegrated. I wanted to just puke. But then again, I sharpened it, used it, sharpened it, used it, and and now it's a great steel. Great is a strong word. I should not use the word great. CTS 204P is a great steel. S35VN is a great steel. VG10 is a good steel. Um, yeah, it's super adequate. I mean, and VG10 is, again, it's the, like Mark Maldonado just said earlier, the Endura and the Delica is the Toyota Corolla of knives, and that's true. And VG10 also is the Toyota Corolla of blade steel. All things considered, in this day and age, it is. But it's a great springboard for somebody getting into knives, like kind of nervous about sharpening and stuff like that. What I did is I learned to sharpen on an old Swiss Army knife, because I went from Swiss Army knife guy straight to a Chris Reeve guy, just like fucking balls out. I didn't stop along the way to pick up a Benchmade or a Spyderco or anything like that. Back in 2000, 17 motherfucking years. That's crazy, huh? But yeah, uh, all things considered, this knife definitely has a place for me. It's like the Mora. It's like a Mora knife. You know, you just kind of have it to be ready to in case you forget your other knife or which like that would ever happen. But yeah, this is a great knife. Or say like I have this knife sitting here because the Survive GSO 4.7, fucking super awesome knife. But I mean, it's a little it's not an EDC, you know, for sure. So I'm a big believer in what I call piggybacking knives. So like I'll have one for one purpose, one for another purpose. What I do a lot of times is I'll have a clean knife and a dirty knife, and I don't have it on me right now, but so clean knife would be for like picking splinters out of my fingers and stuff like that. A dirty knife would be for food prep. Lems, my dog's screwing with my tripod. Hey Lems, quit screwing with my tripod. No, go on. Um, so yeah, that's a good way to do it too. But also, it's like a fine knife and a brutal knife, you know. So um, something for camp chores and something for shaving your pubes. Just kidding. Um, Next in the green knife lineup here is one that I've talked about many, many times. Not this particular one, but many, many times I've discussed the old Spyderco Military, right? I mean, this is just a great knife. Um, I would highly, highly recommend anybody who's never owned a military to check one out. Yes, it's a big ass knife. Hell, the Enduro 4 is a big ass knife. Honestly, what's this thing? This thing's like probably 3.75 or something. I don't know. It's a big knife. Um, 4-inch blade, and it feels like a 4-inch blade. Like, boy, I tell you what, man, like you first pick up a military and you're like, that's not a knife, but it's a big mother. Um, these days, for me, though, because I never once like when you look at like my past military videos, which were I don't know 5 years ago plus, um, I would have never considered buying a Delica 4 or an Endura 4 because I'm just like, first off, it's ugly. Second, it's not made in the United States. Third, it's not for me. But now I'm kind of changing my tune a little bit. I'm like I either want like a super nice knife like a Chris Reeve and Cosi or an XM18 or a Sebenza or something like that, or I'm gonna carry a Spyderco Native 5 is one that I carry a whole lot. It's not here right now because it's not green, baby. These are green knives right now. But this knife is it's hard for me to carry this knife because I've always felt slightly under knifed when I'm not carrying one of those other knives that I just mentioned. Like when I'm not carrying an XM18, then I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why do I not? Why am I not carrying my XM18? Oh, because I don't want to scratch it. Well, that's not. I don't feel that way at all. Like I have no problems using and scratching out my XM18 or my Nkosi or my Sebenzas. And like I said earlier, I want to I want to get to know every knife that I have so I can actually have an opinion on it. I mean, if I never use this knife, I wouldn't even know that it's my favorite knife. You know, that's how I know that I love it because I use the shit out of it. um, I've also used the shit out of other militaries. This one I have not used. Cajun Place says different size blade depends on what you're doing at the time. I go back and forth between larger and smaller blades. Absolutely. I mean, for instance, I can't carry this knife today or this knife today because these two knives, if they're in your pocket in the state of Colorado, they're over 3.5 inches, and that is a big, big no no. This knife right here is just under 3.5 inches, which means I can definitely enjoy 1 to 7 beers for St. Patrick's Day without getting in any trouble. So, yeah, that's a good example of that for sure. Or food prep, you know. This is a great food prep knife where the XM18 definitely is a little bit less, it's a little more lackluster, I should say. But yeah, this knife kind of just falls in the middle ground for me. It's not, it's not, it's not a cheap knife, and it's not a fancy knife. But for some people who like aren't dumbasses like me and are just like, I just need a knife, bro. Like for instance, my buddy JP Wiggins, I sold him my black the last video I made on the military. I sold him that knife and he just loves it. But he's the type of guy who like he buys a knife and until he loses it or breaks it, and he buys another knife. And for that person, you can't beat a military or a paramilitary too. Um, but for somebody like me, and probably everybody who watches this video, who yeah, is just a knife nut and wants to be prepared for their unique situations. Hey, thanks. Gary Felton says, "Glad to see you active again." I appreciate that, man. These videos are super fun. Um, it's just goofy. I'm just rattling, saying my goofy ass shit. But yeah, what a great knife for somebody who just wants a knife, just wants to carry a knife. Wants to have a knife, wants to be prepared, wants to be more self-reliant and helpful for others. Um, that's what it's all about. Being more capable. And taking it to your budget, I guess. um, but yeah, I guess I haven't ever talked about the CQI military and improvements, and which is this is not really the time or place for it because it's a fucking St. Patrick's Day video. But um, I love all the CQI improvements. They're across the board wonderful. And if I did have an older military, um, I do think that like you're a person is slightly more prepared by having this knife versus one without the CQI improvements, just because it's going to be slightly more robust, I believe. You know, some of the CQI improvements are bullshit and they're like just designed for Spyderco to be able to make the knife a little bit easier or make it, the centering better and the action better, easier. It has not less to do with making the knife better and just as making it easier to make. So don't forget that is absolutely a fact. Same with Chris Reeve knives. That all those changes that Chris Reeve has done, all of them, are not to make the knife better. They're to make the knife easier to manufacture. Um, my favorite knife, probably that I've ever owned, easily my favorite knife now, is my non-flipper XM18. And this thing is it really just kind of hits every mark that I want with a knife. Super comfortable in the hand, beefy, reliable, green as shit. I mean, this knife's green, right? It's funny, this morning when I got up and this occurred to me, oh, I'm gonna do a green knife video. Um, I was like, oh, I have two green knives. And then I was like, oh shit, my XM18 sitting on my bedside table. That's green too. And then I'm like, oh shit, I have this other kind of, oh, okay, I have another green knife. um, but yeah, so I was like, hell yeah, I get to talk about my XM18 a little bit more. So, which I definitely enjoy. I said this morning when I did my Instagram video that it's a crying shame that the XM18 has more or less been overshadowed by some of the other knives that have been coming out recently because the hype is real with the XM18. There is nothing that I don't like about the Rick Hinder XM18. I mean, there's surely I could nitpick and be like, well, in this day and age, you should probably be doing sculpted handles. I mean, geez, is it really break the bank for $1 million company to buy a 5-axis mill? I don't know but at the same time, most of the rounded off knives that I've had, that's a 3.5, yeah. That there's a 3 point. I have extra large hands, so yeah, there's a 3.5 non-flipper slicer with all working finish. Everything's working finish on it, and then Jade um, G G10 or natural G10, however you want to say that. This is stock. This is totally stock. This is how I bought this knife. It popped up on GearBarrel.com when the that first batch of non-flippers came out, which I believe honestly, like if you counted all the non-flipper XM18s that came out of the factory, at least 3.5-inch ones, it's a very low number, probably like 30 or something like that. It's a very, very low number, where it actually says on the box that it comes in non-flipper, hasn't been like pimped or anything, which I'm totally fine with pimping knives. I don't give a shit. But yeah, very, very few knives are made or designed as well as the XM18. Um, like I said on the Instagram video, I would prefer just a slightly thinner grind. And that said, I would never. I have owned other XM18s. I have owned a Spear Point, and it's not like a huge, huge difference. But I mean, we all know, those of us that use our knives, a few thousandths of an inch thinner at the shoulder of the edge bevel, it can make a big difference, you know. And S35VN is a very tough steel. Like you can bring it down thinner, like a Chris Reeve knife. You know, those shits are thin, man. They get those things down real thin. Um, so yeah, I would like to see that. But just the way that the hardware is made and the way the knife is designed is it is unbeatable. Like that aspect of the XM18 is is unbeatable. Sure, there's other knives that have it. The Sabenza has it. Hell, the fucking Endura 4 even has it. And that is where, and I've said this not to beat a dead horse over and over, but again, the military is missing it, and that's because they make this knife easier to manufacture. Um, the best and most, there is no proper way. There's lots of ways to make a knife, lots of ways to skin a cat, but the best way to do this is to have a female pin, which you know has a shoulder on it that has a screw threaded into that, and the screw really is just holding that female pin into place and sandwiching the scales together. And then every set of hardware on the knife should be also be like that, you know. So that all these backspacer screws, female pin threaded with a spacer that's just captive, and then a screw holding that all together. And what you see a lot of, so like for instance, like the Koenig or the Koenig Arius, that knife and almost every other fucking knife in the whole goddamn world now is two screws screwing into a backspacer, and that's it. Like a Chris Reeve knife in Cosi has um, a spacer that is shouldered, right? So it's like it is also a kind of pin-ish, but again, it's going to be stronger if it's two parts rather than if it's three parts. Where in this case, you know, you have a screw, a pin, and then a spacer. The spacer, all it's doing is being a spacer. Where like if the spacer is threaded, it is kind of trying to act like a pin, but there is no pin. Actually, the screws at that point are trying to also be the pin, but but a screw is filled with voids. You know, a screw is threaded. You know, so it has all these voids in it. So that they're not strong. Screws are not nearly as strong as like a solid pin, even if that pin's hollow. Um, so yeah, just that alone makes the XM18 rare in the knife world and an upgrade from lots of other knives. Um, Aesthetically, I think XM18s leave a little bit to be desired. Some people think they're gorgeous. I don't think it's great. It's a functional, you know, design more than like an aesthetic design. I do love the working finish, the G10, the Jade G10. I think that's a super cool um, finish. But non-flipper, I mean, is the way to go. If I was to buy another XM18, although the flipper ones are fine, they're fun. It's good enough. I prefer the non-flipper, but I probably will pick up one of those the slippies. Although I don't like the way that they fasten the scales on the slippies. I don't like those three screws, especially the one how on the slippy you'll notice there's a pivot screw and then there's a fucking scale screw right next to it. And for some reason that just irks me. I don't like it. I like Blaze. Have you never had an XM18? I can't believe that. That's crazy. Cajun Blaze says he's never had an XM18. That's ridiculous. I'm really shocked at that. Yeah, I mean they're cool. I love the finish on this. Never. I can't believe it. Cajun Blaze says he's never had an XM18. Well, how about that? Out of all the knives going through that man's hands, that's really shocking. Um, I don't love this the stop pin being here, but at the same time being in the blade. But at the same time, literally, I've opened and closed this knife 1,000 times. I've had it for exactly a year, basically. Um, I bought this knife last April, 2017. It's May. Today is May 15th, 17th. I don't know. Sorry, March 15th or 17th. It's freaking St. Patrick's Day, is what it is, 2018 today. Um, so yeah, that just is what it is. I just prefer, for some reason, for the stop pin to be here in the handle. A lot of people, this stop pin here in the XM18 is only for the closed position stop pin. It almost looks like it touches in the open position, but it doesn't. The stop pin for the open position is the thumb studs. Um, this knife, middle finger flips, no problem. This knife right here too, guys, um, I use the shit out of it. Like, what I'm doing, I'm a carpenter, and I've been remodeling a bathroom the past few days, and this thing has been, I use it every day at work, just been getting covered in concrete dust because I've been cutting hardy board, half-inch hardy board for the shower walls, and I'm also doing a knee wall in there. So the past 48 hours, this knife has been just getting covered in concrete dust, and after work, I'll wash it with soap and water, no lubrication. So this knife has zero lubrication in it at all. Um, no, solid as a rock, no blade play, and smooth. I prefer to run my knives as dry as I can, because not necessarily totally dry, but as dry as I can. As a, Unless the detent ball is like screeching on the blade, that's the only time I'll lubricate a knife, um, personally. But yeah, just a great knife. I really love like the width of it. The reason I first bought an XM18 was because I was like, that looks like a comfortable handle. And shit, man, I bought my first XM18 just at the end of the XM18 craze. So I paid for my very first XM18, which I never did a video on, $600 or something like that for a damn XM18. It cost me more than my first Shirogorov cost me, um, which is crazy. But and I carried and beat that knife up, and it had all kinds of chips in the G10 and stuff when I sold it. But yeah, it was a cool knife. It was a CPM 20CV, which also I didn't love. I like S35VN more than 20CV or M390 or CTS 204P. It's funny because like people are like, oh, CTS 204P holds the edge longer and is also easier to sharpen than S35VN. That's definitely not been my findings. I actually haven't used the shit out of this here green knife, but I've just kind of touched it up. That's what I prefer to do. If I use the shit out of a knife, or if I use it a decent amount in a day, I come home and depending on how long I've had the knife, if I haven't had the knife very long, I sharpie the edge, both sides, thick black sharpie, and then I touch it up until the sharpie's gone. And then I cut some paper and I go, that works for me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I didn't quite get the tip sharp. Oh, fuck it, I don't care. Like, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm sharpening this damn thing until I get the tip sharp. We'll see. Um, but yeah, XM18, God, what else is there to say about it? I mean, in my opinion, I don't know. I'm sure there's better knives, but it's the best. It is the best knife that I've come across personally. So what did I talk about all three of these knives? Jesus, we're at 29 minutes. This is a long video. That's just the way it goes when you go live, or for me anyway. Um, Last and certainly least is the Knives of Alaska Featherlight Hunter. This knife could be a great knife. I want to say these knives are made in Plano, Texas, just there, just north of Dallas, I think is where these guys are made. I bought this knife. I actually posted a video about it. I bought this knife because I sent my hunter's hatchet back to Knives of Alaska, and they were so cool about replacing the handle on that. Literally, I was like, no, I fucked it up. I broke the handle because I'm a dumbass. I want to pay for it. And they're like, no, that's not how this works. It's a lifetime warranty. We pay for it. So I went, so you're not going to take any money from me? They're like, no, actually, we're going to send you a check because you shipped it to us and it cost you money. I'm like, God, well, shit. All right, well, let me give you $50 so I can get it this, Featherlight Hunter. So I bought this knife direct from Knives of Alaska. I will be giving this knife away for free when I sell my hunter's hatchet because I don't ever use it. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll be posting that on Blade Forums at some point. Don't know when, maybe never, but but I plan to um, give this knife away for free when I sell my hunter's hatchet. D2 steel. I don't think I've ever used this knife, and the only reason I have it now is because I've kept it to give it away. Um, but it is featherlight. I will say that. Very much like, say, like a military. It has just a kind of partial liner here around this side of the pivot inside there. If you can see that, probably not because the lighting blows. And then it has a full liner on this side for the liner lock. So it is a really cool, simple, minimalistic design, but it has one fatal flaw, and that is it doesn't actually lock. So, well, now it's locked. But yeah, probably doesn't help that I'm forcing it to go past that liner. And to be honest, if I there was a time when I actually stuck a plastic um, table knife in here and kind of tweaked that closed a little bit. And for a minute there, it actually was locking up. So it's possible that if you open and close this knife 1,000 times, that it could wear a burr away and suddenly lock up now. But as it stands, this knife is the shittiest green knife on the table, that's for sure. And then, oh, this knife is not green. Now it's green. But yeah, a good mix of knives here. Minus this thing. That thing can just S all the D's. Um, but yeah, Endura 4, wonderful, wonderful green knife here for Saturday, St. Patrick's Day 2018. Um, I consider this a budget knife because I think a person shouldn't be fucking around with why would you carry a shitty knife or even like a CRKT or anything like with some mystery steel in it. Like, don't do that. Never do that. Like, pony up, spend a couple bucks. I mean, for God's sakes, this knife here costs less than I'm gonna spend on beer today for sure. I mean, like, so, and it's not like I have a huge beer budget or anything like that, but it's just shit, man. People can make a couple sacrifices to get a decent knife. Great middle ground knife here for like that person who has a slightly larger budget and wants to carry something really nice. I mean, like, these two knives are not comparable, honestly. Like, I mean, CTS 204P will blow the fucking doors off of VG10. I mean, in every single way. Toughness, rust resistance, edge holding. The only thing you lose is it's going to be night and day to sharpen. The VG10 like sharpens itself. Like, when you start to sharpen it, it's like, oh god, now it's just sharp. What the fuck happened? Compared to something like this. And then the Rick Hinder XM18, probably my all-time favorite knife. Um, there's very few, if anything, slightly thinner grind, and this is the slicer. This is the thinnest grind they have. Um, would be my only gripe about this knife. But yeah, salud, amigos. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful St. Patrick's Day 2018. Carry your green knife if you have one. I'm going to be carrying this XM18, like I said. And palabra a tu madre, boys and girls.